I'll tell you right before I'm like about to record and stuff. I'm just getting the link for the live right now. We'll technically be live on YouTube in a second.
And you guys' YouTube page reads Northeast Georgia Business Alliance.
Yep, the EGA Business Alliance.
Okay. We're live on YouTube. Let me get the link.
All righty.
We're live on Facebook and
Ready to record?
about to press the button now. Recording now.
Good evening, everyone. We are back for 19 days of Juneteenth with the Northeast Georgia Business Alliance. I am Michelle Pearson, and I'm joined with our Executive Director, Keisha Riles.
Hey, hey, hey.
And our guest for the evening, Pastor James Ricardo Smith.
Hello.
As we dive into the 19 days of Juneteenth, we recognize all things Black history with the Northeast Georgia Business Alliance as our focus, really working through just some general conversations. As always, I always say we are not the experts. You're just having our life experience exposed to you. So welcome to our living room. And we're going to have the conversation tonight about the value of life and social justice and the role of the Black church. So with the Business Alliance, again, as we are doing our Say It Saturday, we welcome Pastor James Ricardo Smith to have that conversation with us. Feel free to ask questions or comment, and we will try our best to work those questions and comments in to what we have going on tonight. So we say welcome to you. If you are wondering what's the rest of the schedule looking like for the Business Alliance in 19 days of Juneteenth, visit our website at NEGA, that's the abbreviation for Northeast Georgia, NEGA, businessalliance.org. Go to the events tab and click Juneteenth. There you'll see what we have going on the rest of the week, and we'll provide a recap at the end. So we're going to dive right in because this is one of my favorite topics to have. And so we're going to dive right in, and I'll say, welcome, Pastor James Ricardo Smith of Brown's Chapel in Bishop, Georgia. So Ricky is on. So I'm telling you guys now, I'm going to call him Ricky throughout because we're friends. So again, this is our living room conversation. So Ricky, introduce yourself to everybody and tell them, what you do and what you got going on at Brown's Chapel right now.
Well, hello, everyone. First, let me say thank you to Michelle and also to Keisha for all the amazing work that you guys do with the Northeast Georgia Business Alliance. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to come to be a part of what is our freedom and independence celebration, and that is Juneteenth. And so what a joy it is for me to be here. As you mentioned, my name is James Ricardo Smith, better known as Ricky to a lot of people. And I serve as the pastor of Brown's Chapel Baptist Church in Bishop, Georgia. If you're not familiar with Bishop, we are a suburb of sorts outside of the metropolitan Athens area. I've served there at Brown's Chapel now 8 years. And during this time of serving there, in recent years, the Lord had placed upon my heart to do a conference that would help pastors and leaders do some of the things that we're going to talk about today. And so one of the things that I feel very strongly about is that the church, regardless of where your church is located, it is connected to a larger community. And so the church has to invest and play a role in the community, or there's really no purpose for the church being in the community. If the community could survive and thrive without the church, then that's extremely problematic. And so we've been trying our best to make a difference in the Oconee County area. We've also, because about 50% of our church drives in from Athens, we also have some initiatives that we do in the Athens, Clark County area. And this is just my lane. This is just where I love to reside in. Morehouse is all in my blood. And so social justice came with the territory. So Brown's Chapel know that they got a radical pastor. And so I just love this, and I'm excited to have this conversation. due to the pandemic, I'm doing this at home. And so y'all hear that telephone in the back. I'm sure my wife is going to grab that. But I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be here.
I'll say a pastor's work is never done. Y'all are one of those 24-hour jobs. So
hey, neither is the first lady. Don't forget her.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so, Rondalyn, affectionately known as Nikki to some of you all. So, hey, Rondalyn. But so I have to ask you this, because you mentioned the work that you're doing at your church. And all too often I hear the younger generation saying that there's really no need for the Black church these days. And you and I both know, and especially you being a Morehouse man, I knew you were gonna work that in, right? But we know that the Black church was the cornerstone for the Black community forever, right? Even back in slavery, pre-Juneteenth, that the Black church was a communication vehicle. So yes, we went there to praise the Lord, but that was also a communication vehicle for so many things. And so now we hear from especially our generation, even, and even younger generations are saying that there's no need for the Black church. What do you have to say to them?
Well, I would argue that in a number of different ways. One thing I would say is it depends on what Black church you're speaking of. Because there are, and I believe this pandemic is going to shed more light on that, there are a lot of Black churches that are not engaged in this work whatsoever. They are solely committed to having church. And so when that is your sole focus, I do believe there's something about the corporate experience that uplifts and motivates us, but it can't stop there. It has we got to put action behind those experiences. And so it depends on what Black church you're speaking of. And let me discuss this from a perspective focusing on millennials and Generation Z, our younger generations. You've got two different groups of sorts that I see currently. And one of those groups is the group that you just mentioned that is not connected to a local church at all, but they are connected to the movement. They're excited. They have galvanized and mobilized themselves to get immersed in the work. But where I would say, what I would push back a bit with them is that they don't have a moral compass that's behind what it is that they're doing. So if you look at the civil rights movement, as you mentioned, the civil rights movement was led by the church and was led by young people. It was led by the church and even younger people in the church. I mean, we talk about Martin Luther King, like, this man was in his 60s and 70s marching. That man died at 39 years old. I'm 37. And so this is the work that we've been called to do. But then there were college students. There were the John Lewises and the Jesse Jacksons and Andy Youngs that were college age, that were mobilized during that time. And so we need the young people to aggressively do this work, but we also need the church to be the energy and to be that moral sense, that nonviolent protesting that needs to be out front, in front of this. And so I'll before I get to this other group, let me finish this one by saying, even if you look at the city of Athens, we've had protests this week, Sunday, and again today. All right. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but I also wanted to say at the beginning, much power to those who are out fighting for justice, even now as we're doing this together. But there are local pastors who we've been meeting, and I'll talk about that at a later time. But there are local pastors that are committed, that are galvanized to do work together. But I believe, had we gotten in front of last week's protest, then perhaps things might have been handled a different way. Instead of us meeting instead of us having a meeting on Wednesday with the police chief, we could have met ahead of time, and things may have happened a little bit differently. So we've got to be, as leaders of those Black churches, have got to be out on the front line, because I believe that our generation wants to be connected to something that is actually making a difference for our people. And so as long as the church, we keep having church, but people still suffering, people still struggling, people still can't pay their bills, people still don't have food on the table, people still turn on their TVs and see what we've seen for the last 2 months. So we have got to mobilize ourselves as leaders first, to make sure that we're not that Black church that this generation doesn't want to be a part of. But then there's this other group. They go to church, they just don't go to our churches.
So let me, and Omar, feel free to join us. And as you say that,
I see it. Thank you.
oh yeah. So I'll say this because it hit on a nerve when you made that comment, because I think, you know, and this has been several years ago, and I think it may have been back when we were all struggling and battling with the frustration of Trayvon Martin. And I remember here locally, one Sunday, one of our multicultural churches was going to do a program addressing, you know, the relationship with the Black community. So instead of going to my normal Ebenezer West, I ventured out, myself and Dr. Joan Collier, who will be joining us one day next week. We went to this other church. I will not call their name. And I remember we both kept looking at each other during the service and having a whole conversation. You know what I mean? We make faces at each other. We had a whole conversation during this service about the things that were being said and being asked of us as Black people. And there's so many things of, you, white person, you should have this conversation with your Black friend, ask them questions, engage them. And part of me was sitting there and wanted to say, it is not my responsibility to educate you as a white person about me. Y'all don't want to give us Black History Month.
Yeah.
And so we saw, and that's the only half of a piece that we do education in our school system during Black History Month. And then we talk about the same Dr. King, Rosa Parks. They may mention Malcolm X. We ain't gonna talk about him because he's a little too radical for most people. But we don't go beyond that. We don't even talk about John Lewis, since he's right here in Georgia. And so we keep it in a small box that makes us happy. And so for me, multicultural churches is not a place for me. I just realized I cannot thrive there as a Black person because you can't talk about my Black issues when I leave there. But what do you see as the difference when you're having these conversations?
Wow. How much time?
That was a lot.
Do I spill over into tomorrow's interview? No. So I'll start by this saying it this way. I have been fortunate enough. I'm a native of Athens, and so being a native, I can kind of hit people to the landscape of different things. Whenever new pastors come to the city, I try my best to extend an olive branch to reach out to them, Black or white, and I've done that. I would like to say pretty consistently across the board. I had Black pastors that have taken readily to those invitations, and I've had white pastors that reached out to me a year later to say, "Oh, I forgot about that opportunity to break bread, but let's talk now." And some of those have become fruitful relationships, others have not. And so I said all that to say this. I've always said that it's easier for us to conform and acclimate to a predominantly white church that has white leadership but calls itself a multicultural, multi-ethnic church. But you won't see white people infiltrate our churches and submit to leadership that is by African Americans. That's the first thing. Sometimes their ice is colder than ours. All right.
Right.
But then the other piece of that is that they have resources and things that they have been able to structure and organize that the Black church just hadn't done. Now, this is where I'm gonna call out the Black church. We're losing a lot of our generation because our youth programming is not, can't compare to theirs. They got whole schools dedicated to age ranges, and we can't do that same kind of stuff with the limited resources that we have, which is a whole nother conversation as it relates to how far economically the Black church is behind, Black people are behind, and reparations ought to be a real conversation. But that's a whole nother. Y'all can have somebody else who got some expertise in that when y'all interview them. But I think that this time of a global pandemic and a national epidemic on ebony bodies. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a global pandemic of the coronavirus. It's got us out of the churches. All right. So people are not physically meeting. Black churches communal. We're used to being together. That's not an option for us at the current moment. We are disproportionately affected by the virus. As soon as we get ready to go back into church, even in my own family, you got somebody who succumbs to the virus. So those things are on our mind. Then you've got this genocide on ebony, Black and brown bodies that we're dealing with. And if your church is not speaking to that, then you need to leave your church. It's that simple. You know, we catching it multiple ways. And if that doesn't resonate with the leadership of the church, or if it only resonates to the point for us to softly massage the situation versus doing the hard work of repentance and digesting and understanding what it is, then we need to make sure that we get back to the places that know us, if that makes sense. I'll say it this way, and I don't care where this video goes, I'll tag people in it that need to see it. But the Black church, the Black pastor is very unique. Pastor Omar Curry has clicked in on this on the Zoom. I gave him the Zoom link directly.
That's all right. Yeah.
He pastors in this area. He's also an educator. And I'm sure he has seen this, and I don't know if he wants to chime in, that's up to him. But Black pastors, when your child gets in trouble in school, the Black pastor will walk with you through that moment. The Black pastor show up to the school with you. When your mama died and you had been in church in 10 years, the Black pastor will still walk with you through that funeral, hold your hand as you, and put a hand on the casket at the cemetery. But will the white pastor do the same thing for the Black and brown families that reside, that are connected to their church? We've got to, and those are the real conversations. I don't care, and I got white friends, but I don't care. That's the work of the church, all right? And we have come. Pastor Curry said he drove to Mississippi for one. Look at that. Our pastor emeritus at Ebenezer, my pastor will get in his car, drive to Florida for a funeral, drive back up that next day, and change clothes to go preach on Sunday. That's the work we do, you know. And so my prayer is that this moment of the pandemic and the epidemic on Black bodies, that this moment will help us to strategize, to organize, to see the value of the Black church again, and see that pastors will do the work to make the Black church relevant again. I know it was a long response, but I'm sorry.
I would chime in as well, just to piggyback off that a little bit. When I was growing up in Florida, of course, I got in, like I did something horrible in like 6th grade. And I remember,
not you, no way. Not you.
I know, right? I know people can't believe it, but I did. But it was my mom, my uncle, and my pastor that was there.
I hear you.
And to me, it was just like, you knew as a child, when you saw the pastor, you knew you was in trouble. Because the pastor only come for 2 occasions. That's death or in trouble. And so I was just like, oh, I did something real bad. Okay, this is bad. And so I think just like in my upbringing, that helped me as a young adult to be more, you know, receptive and acceptive of the Black pastor. And when I'm making a choice to join the church, you know, I went to University of Central Florida, go Knights. And in Orlando, my mom would get so mad because she's like, you visit all these churches, but you don't find a church home. That's because these churches is multicultural. Mama, like these, like I go here because my friends go here, or I go here because I might have liked the message that William McDowell, whose church is phenomenal. I may have liked the message, but I'm not gonna join this church because William McDowell ain't coming to my grandmama's funeral like Reverend Hope did.
There you go.
You know what I mean? So I think that plays a key part, and it's not just, you know, for the older generation. I want people to understand that. Like, I just turned 30, and as a 30-year-old woman, that's important to me. What's important is who's gonna be there when things hit the fan for me. Who's gonna have my back? So I applaud you and other local pastors. And the reason why I'm so close with you know, like Reverend Bloodsaw and things like that is because that's his pastor style. You know,
absolutely.
that kind of Pastor Sims is another one. Love me some Pastor Sims. That's my other daddy.
Absolutely.
Because he'll show
Absolutely.
up and he'll show out for you. And that's what we need. It's an alliance that we need in our community. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah. And what I hear both of you saying are relationships, you know, and I was sitting here because I would also add that list, you know, even Reverend Lett. You know, I remember when my grandmother passed away and dealing with, you know, just the family issues after that, at a very young age, because I just turned 39, and this has been several years ago when my maternal grandmother passed away, who was the matriarch. And it was almost like my family said, here you go, Michelle, you now are carrying that crown. And I was like, wait, what? Huh? Who? Me? And that was a very difficult thing. And so while, yes, I was in the leadership of Pastor Hope, Reverend Lett was also there because he was going through a very similar situation with his family. And Reverend Lett and I would have conversations about it, and he would call and check on me. But you're right. So what I hear you both talking about is relationship building. And any multicultural churches I visited, that relationship just wasn't there. And I don't want to say it's because I'm Black. And I'm also not saying that it does not exist with some of their other congregational members. But what I do know is that when I'm having the conversation, like you said, Ricky, even just about the family legacy, I'm gonna go down that road at some point, that here's what the normalcy is. I don't have to explain those things because those are some very cultural things that we deal with inherently that we understand, and I don't have to explain it. And it's exhausting sometimes to explain, here's why I need you here, or here's why I now became the matriarch and what that translates to in my family. The extra burdens I get that I got to make sure everybody else who my grandma had 15 insurance policies on, that they still get paid. and those kind of things, those small things that we don't realize as a person you carry, and we don't even think about because they're our normal. But I didn't get that experience and that support when I went to any of them multicultural churches, especially during my college years, because I was in a different area, not here in Athens. So yeah.
Now before you ask your next question, I will say this. I'm not knocking every multicultural church. I'm not even knocking predominantly white churches, because I got a very close and dear brother. His church is predominantly white. He has a Black family that's in the church, but I will go to him before some of those who are multicultural, because he's doing the hard work of dismantling white supremacy. All right. And he's doing that work in his church. He's trying to be aware of that Black family that feels slightly uncomfortable being there, but they feel led to be there. And he's working and walking with them through it. So I will forever champion him. I don't want anybody to say that watch this video, because this is what they tried to put out on me this week. That I didn't, you know, that I wasn't exuding enough Christ in how I was communicating. And I'll just wait to get to that when you ask me another question. But let me just say, I'm not trying to throw everybody under the bus. I am trying to hold people accountable. Yes. You got to be held accountable. If you got Black bodies in your church, you need to be held accountable. And if you don't want to do that, then I pray that those black and brown bodies will find another church where they feel that level of relationship that we just been talking about. So, all right.
Look, no, don't worry. We're heading down that road, because the one thing you said, and I'll take some of the heat, because I think I live at a constant state of boiling. I'm right at that simmer line, but I'm about to be Jesus flipping tables over. Like, that's my normal, just so everybody knows. So behind my smile, that is my normal. So I'm very alert. I'm very attuned when people say things. So. I have to kind of keep myself there. And that's just for everybody, so y'all know that's where I live. And so I do hear things with a different ear sometimes. But the one thing that you said that, and I'll tie this back to even the Black Lives Matter movement and kind of where it is in the Black church. When people say that you are not Christ-like in your response, I think about Luke, and we had the 100 sheep and Jesus go looking for the one. Well, that's the Black Lives Matter, because that one was the one in danger. The 99 were good. Absolutely. And so how do you think the Black church has to reconcile with that relationship? And I say that because even inside of our churches, our Black churches, we hear that. I've heard some other Black folks say, well, yeah, all lives matter. And they were and I was like, are you missing this? You're older than me. You lived through this, the civil rights movement, in a different way when you could not do. So how do you reconcile that when you talk to other clergy and just in other spaces of Black churches, when we're still struggling with the Black Lives Matter movement in our churches?
Yeah. The fact that we would have to add a 2 to the end of Black Lives Matter to make people be able to clearly understand what we've been trying to communicate is problematic. It has never been a question. I told a white pastor this week. It has never been a question if white lives matter in America. That has never been a question. Matter of fact, white America has they forced their way into America against brown bodies, and then built America on the backs of Black bodies. And so it was never set up for us to succeed in this medium. And so what the Black church has to address, and this is why I said some Black churches, we've got to address how we have allowed white theology to build the Black church.
Mm.
There's a such thing called Black liberation theology, and there are white brothers and sisters who have dismantled Black liberation theology. James Cone, and I'm a reader, and so I may throw out some book titles that people really want to do this work. That's when you find out people really serious if they're gonna do this work or not. But James Cone, whether it's God of the Oppressed, Black Theology, Black Power, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, those are some books that James Cone was believed to be the father of Black liberation theology. But because Black liberation theology is so radical, it's so far, it's so out there for some people, in reality, what it's saying is, as Dr. Matt King Carter would call him, that Jesus is a Negro from Nazareth. He's not a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. And so what we've got to be able to do is really think through from a theological standpoint, how we have gotten to this point, and be able to really work together to move the corporate church or the universal church forward. You know, the Bible was used to oppress Black people. The Bible was used to justify slavery. Slavery, the Bible was written before slavery even came into being in America. So how can you say slaves obey your master and say that that's what that meant when it was originally written? So it's those little nuanced things that people have done to manipulate the Bible that has driven a wedge in building relationships between the Black church and the white church. Now back to your question in terms of really being able to get to the nuts and bolts of this work. Being able to do that is going to require the church to have a dual focus. We can't just be inside of our four walls, which is what the blessing of the pandemic has been. We've got to engage with culture as well. And that's where people have their concerns about Christ, because Christ transforms culture. And it seems like they think that we're trying to acquiesce, we're trying to go right along with culture. I believe strongly that the gospel still changes lives. And so just because the way the gospel is packaged in this Black body is different from the way it's packaged in yours doesn't mean that it's any less Christ-like. You know, I'll bowl down this lane. There was a letter that was formed that wasn't formed as a joint stance of sorts about, you know, where we stood as it relates to Black and brown body. We already know where we stand as it relates to Black people. All right. Our letter was formed to really encourage members of our churches, about 15 local pastors, to really inform our people of the current climate. We're not meeting in church physically, all right? But so is it sensible for us to go out and protest without implementing some safety procedures, all right? And I don't know how safe you're gonna be. You know, Michelle and I, you know, Keisha, we were at a graveside, you know, service today, and you know, for the most part, I saw people doing the best they could with social distancing, but before you knew it, folks were hugging each other, and you know, that's what we do. We embrace. You know, there's hundreds of people out there at the cemetery, but you know, we were embracing. Same thing happened, you know, at these marches. You know, apparently one of the speakers tested positive for the coronavirus, and so what we were trying to do with our letter was to say, hey, we want you to be safe. If you feel led to go protest, by all means, we are not against that. But don't forget, in the midst of that, we have a virus. We have a global pandemic on our hands. But if you don't feel led to go, these are some ways that you can still make a difference. Go vote on Tuesday. We want you to go vote. We need you to go vote on Tuesday. We need you to help change policy. That's what my mindset is now. We were talking about strategy. You got to go do that. You know, and we want to build better relationships with the local law enforcement. You know, and so the letter was really a clarion call to the community to get us to connect, to do this together, and to do it in the name of the Lord.
Right.
But then, after our letter went out, there was another letter that came out shortly thereafter, or they were in the process of writing, that said, and they asked for my letter. I sent it to a friend who was in the meeting. I was actually on the meeting via Zoom. I sent the letter in because they wanted to see what were the Black clergy saying. And then when they read the letter, and after it was read, it was said it wasn't enough Christ in that letter.
Thanks.
So we have a very different view of Jesus. The Jesus that I serve. I'm sorry, Michelle, I didn't got preacher. I got my turn my preacher voice on here in a minute.
Oh, you good.
But
you good.
You mentioned Luke, and in Luke chapter 4, verse 18, 19, Jesus quotes Old Testament when he says that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to preach the gospel. And he's preaching to the poor, to those who are downtrodden, to those who are outcast, to those who are oppressed. That's the work that Jesus did. And so I really believe that, and this is not a black-white thing. This is a woke, unwoke thing when it comes to preachers.
Yes.
And that is, do you just want to preach about Jesus, or do you want to do the work that Jesus did?
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so I'm going to preach about it, but because I know him for myself, I want to do what he did too. And I think that that's the difference maker when we talk about, you know, what doing things in the name of Christ. That if Jesus was here in the flesh, Jesus would be doing this work.
The reason I reacted the way you did when you mentioned that letter, because again, I told you I live at simmering. I'm right there ready to be boiling all the time. But how I heard that is that we Black clergy sent a letter and you wanted to see it. Cool. And then you come back and critique it as if you are my teacher, as you are this paternal role above me, that I need your permission to do this letter. And then I want to give you my feedback because I didn't think you were there. You're not mentoring me. You're not in a space of seniority over me. And that's how I heard that. And I think those are the small things that come across as very much so the white supremacy side that we shade over, because they'll be the first one, oh, we didn't mean it that way, but you did. You may not have consciously meant it that way, but subconsciously, you white supremacy lives in that space that I am always there to be superior than you.
Yeah, and if there are any white brothers and sisters that are watching, before I close, I do want to. We talk about action items because that's kind of how I flow. I want to. We've been talking about this at length. We saw it with Trayvon Martin. We saw it with Philando Castile. We saw it with Mike Brown. We saw it with Tamir Rice. We've been seeing this forever. So let's now talk. What do we need to do? And there's something that the Black church can do. There's something that the white church can do. There's something that all of us as preachers can do. And so before we get off, if we got enough time, I would love to.
Yeah, that actually was my next question. I was going to ask you kind of what action items, what charge would you give? And I do want to split it up, because I think the Black church, there's some work that we need to do independently of what we're asking the white church to do. And then collectively, the unchurched, right? What are some things that they can do outside of that? Because, and the one thing I'll add at the end of that, because you know me, is going to be more that financial empowerment, some things that I think we need to do. But I'll let you start from a Black church perspective. What do you think that from the Black church, what are some action items, takeaways that they can do now?
Oh, wow. Well, we can have some dialogue right through here in terms of what you mentioned from a financial perspective, because I think that's a bullet point for me as well. Three main things: strategize, organize, mobilize. You know, there's some brilliant Black minds that are even on this on what is it? I keep saying calls when I do these Zooms. Is this a
yeah.
call?
Yeah, we're
Okay,
good on the call. We good.
so
We're showing our age.
I'm
Because
like,
Keisha's
no,
laughing. The
nah.
millennials laughing at us, just for the record.
Yeah.
This is not a call.
On our Zoom
so
meeting.
on this Zoom meeting, this video, whatever. But even those who are connected to the Alliance, you guys have some brilliant entrepreneurs who, and we've got to stop thinking. I think this is a problem the church has as well. We got to stop thinking we can do it by ourselves. That's why I'm loving what is happening with the Black pastors in the community. I'm loving even what's happening with pastors across racial lines in the community as well as a whole. I know it doesn't sound like it today, but I am to some level. But there's great work that can be done, and the church has to be willing to partner. People always ask me, man, how's Brown Chapel doing this? How's Brown Chapel doing that? Well, what we've done is we've tried to be strategic in developing partnerships. We found other like-minded organizations that wanted to do some of the same things we were doing. And so we came alongside of them, or they came alongside of us to help get their work done. So you got to strategize, organize, then mobilize. And these are some of the things that we could do. And that was in our letter. We want to, and that's an initiative of the Black churches in this community. We want every Black Athenian registered to vote. Registering, that's a strategy. The organizing is we got to actually get to them to be able to make sure that it happens, to show them the importance of voting, because that's what changes the policies that allows these things to happen. But then we got to mobilize. They actually got to go do it. We can't just get them registered, but they actually got to go do it. They got to go do it. And so we got these primaries coming up Tuesday, and I'm sure there's a large segment of our community that's so angry and so rage-filled that they don't want to do anything. But I heard a pastor, Pastor Keelan Duke say this week that you need to both have rage and responsibility. And so I'm angry, but what am I going to do about that anger? Am I going to go loot and burn up the target? Or am I going to actually say, by me mobilizing myself and my family and those who I have influence over to get to those polls, to get these races out of office, that's what it's going to take, all right? So voter registration, supporting Black-owned businesses, all right? Encouraging our church, developing some type of directory within your church of people who do certain things in your church, which is a way of economic development within your church with your own entrepreneurs. But listen, local pastor, it'll also bless your church because they'll have more money to tithe back into the work that you're trying to get accomplished. So
Well, you're preaching now.
Okay.
Supporting Black-owned businesses, growing our own food, being able to self-sustain as a community, to start to encourage entrepreneurship, to connect with y'all and be able to see what resources are available to them. That's the work the church can do. That's the work the church can do. And I think that we've got to be able to do that. Go ahead.
I'll use it as a plug for the Business Alliance, because the one thing we talk about all the time with the Business Alliance is that our name definitely says the Business Alliance, but part of that's because all of that revolves around to be a legal entity, and even the church has to be that. And the Business Alliance, we have a three-pronged approach. Truly, we have a business affairs area, which talks about those small businesses and the growing development of our businesses and entrepreneurs in our community. We do a lot of education on that side. We also have a MOB directory, the minority-owned business directory, mobathens.com. And anybody can go in there and self-select and tell about your business, whether you are a legitimate paper, meaning you have a tax ID number, all of that, or if you're just a Facebook business. Either way, we want to know you exist. So when you talk about the support from the churches, our second area is community affairs, which is our educational institutions, our healthcare institutions, and our faith-based community. And so here's where that support from the Business Alliance comes in. From a membership side, for the Black church, by them being a part of this, and I'm saying the Black church, but I think about sororities and fraternities and all of that. Well, we already have the infrastructure for the mobathens.com. Now we have a network that we can go beyond just our four walls and our block of the church. And then you don't have to recreate that. We're doing it for you. The other thing is, from an organization standpoint, I want you as a pastor to be doing your work as a pastor. I don't want you organizing meetings. That's what we do really well. So we can structure that and can have a regular Zoom call with the pastors all in every Monday. I know Monday's y'all day off kind of thing. So every Monday at 10:30, y'all are on a call and y'all can talk about what you need to talk about from a structural standpoint, because guess what? As a business owner, I don't know what that is. But now if you guys leave that meeting with marching orders and we know here's the next thing as a business owner that I should be trying to do, or you may know somebody who I could hire on, those are the kind of things that from the Black church standpoint, from a community affairs area where those things can then matriculate in other spaces. And our third one that you mentioned is the government affairs area. And that's in government affairs where we're really looking at our policies and who's in office. So a lot of that organization, part of the Business Alliance, we're doing some of that work already. And that's how we can coalesce what's happening in the Black community. So the Business Alliance is for everybody under that umbrella, regardless of where you fall. We even have a membership level, $50 a year. If you like, I'm just an individual, I don't own a business, I ain't got no kids in school, I might go to church, maybe I'm a CME Christian, the Christmas, Mother Day, Easter, I don't know where I fit, but I want to know what's going on and be engaged. So there's really no reason we can't have that. And we do have some other perks that we'll be rolling out the week of Juneteenth. Some other things that we'll be doing too to support our membership. So yeah, so then we have some takeaways for our Black churches.
Yes.
What are some takeaways for our white churches and our multi-ethnic churches?
So I'm gonna do a quick plug here if I can.
Okay.
I need everybody to listen. I need everybody to listen to this message that I preached. That'll go out tomorrow. You know, when you're in the rural, when you're not like Pastor Curry, when you pastor in the rural area, you don't have the internet. Even when you upgrade your internet, you still don't have internet to live stream at high quality. And so I did some, I don't know, I can't say my good preaching, but I did the best I could do Friday. I did it yesterday. And so we're going to show it tomorrow. But in there, I issued this call towards the end of the message. And what I'm trying to encourage my white brothers and sisters to do, you don't need to be on the front line of this fight. All right. So for example, what I just said to the Black church, it's just like your family. You know, you fight with your sisters, with your brothers, but you ain't finna let nobody else come in and treat them the way. You stand back, let me take care of this. Right. Which is a whole nother conversation for another time we can gather together when it comes to, you know, every time there's a police brutality situation that comes up and somebody wants to bring up Black on Black crime. I don't have the conversation of Black on Black crime with anybody that have been doing this fight against Black on Black crime, or what is really not Black on Black or white on white or Latino on Latino, Asian on Asian. It is proximity on proximity oftentimes, or poverty on poverty. But I do violence against the people that I'm in relationship with on a regular basis because of how desperate and how dire our situations are. And so I don't need you to step in and save the day, as you mentioned earlier, or that whole, you know, master slave, you know, type relationship. Mm-hmm. I've issued the call to the Black church. Now I need you to hear me when it comes to the white church. With the white church, you got to first sit down and understand what it is that we're talking about. I don't need you to operate in ignorance. I don't need you to operate under your own biases and privilege, but I need you to sit down. If you really don't want to, my white pastor friend, Pastor Matt Adair, I mentioned a white pastor friend earlier, but Matt always say this, they just need to sit in it. And so we let them sit. They need to sit in this moment and listen and learn before they open their mouths. Because sometimes opening their mouths too quickly, they're going to say the wrong thing. And so sit down in it, and then a three-pronged approach. They've got to, once they've got a better understanding, they've got to commit to doing something. Everybody can't do everything. That's the Black community too. We all can't do everything. We're all gifted in uniquely different ways. But you've got to commit to doing something. Then you've got to be willing to change some things about you, change some things about your ideology. You know, when you got more understanding of the Black experience, and I can get them some books that can help with that, you know, but once they take time to really understand it more, then there's some things that are going to change. And then number three, they've got to be willing to call out racism when they see it.
Yes.
I can preach and holler and scream all day, but white people got to start calling out other white people.
Yes.
Freddie Haynes said it this way: white people started racism, white people got to end racism.
Yep.
And Tamika Mallory said it this way after a march. I can't say everything she said. Y'all gonna say I ain't say, but Tamika Mallory said, you know, we learned all this stuff from you. The looting we learned from you. Violence we learned from you. So when you decide you're gonna change that, then perhaps we'll see the change we want to see in America. And so they've got to be willing to commit to it, to make the changes, and then call out each other. You know, somebody else needs to call out some white people should have called out that father and son and the other man down in Brunswick.
Michaels, yeah.
There you go. It shouldn't have taken, it wouldn't have had to take the protest and, you know, the whole nation coming behind it. If somebody had called him out, if somebody had called out all this trickery and tomfoolery with passing it around and people, you know, pulling favors and hiding the situation. White people got to step up to the plate, and that's how they can do it. Don't and not by having a kumbaya photo op, you know, press conference with us holding hands. No, right. Sit down somewhere, understand it, and then after you've understood, when you see that, when you have grown, you know, grandmama said, when you learn better, you do better. You know, right. when you've got past that, then go back and help your brother, go back and help your sister. Right. So that's my call to the white churches. Okay.
And we actually talked a little bit about that yesterday too. And I used Dr. Bettina Love's quote that she says, we need allies and co-conspirators. And so
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And let's be very clear. She was very distinct about an ally and a co-conspirator. A lot of the allies is who we're seeing protest right now. You came out there and made you feel good. You took a photo. You feel like you did something. When you're a co-conspirator, it's when you actually speak out against it, like you said. I need you to show up and say, no, this is wrong. I need you to actually be there hiring people, paying them equally.
Wow.
It's doing that hard work and stepping in. And so I will ask it, because I know you are an avid reader, and we'll love it. We'll call it the Pastor James Ricardo Smith Book Club. Send us a list of some books. We'll post them on our site so people who want to do the work, we'll share. Here's some.
I would love to.
So we will definitely do that. Let me also ask you about this, especially for educational opportunities. Tell us about your Classic City Conference.
Wow, absolutely. So about 3 years ago, and Michelle, you were there to help us build this. There was a vision that I had. I've always felt called to this community and to this area. Most people, you know, when they want to pastor somewhere outside of their community, but I felt called to come back home to invest here. And so as a part of that investment, I've been able to build relationships with preachers and leaders across the nation at various conferences. But I always would look at those conferences and try to figure out how could we shape something that would meet the needs of those who are present in the Athens area. And so it really, and I pray that it catches on this way this year in a real big form, because we've been blessed to have people come in from other places, and about half of our registrants have also been local. But I'm praying that the local churches of this community see the value of it. Classic City Conference is really designed to bring resources. And so we have a number of vendors and sponsors that really help to advance your church, but it's also about building relationships. I love to see to be able to bring in keynote speakers that'll walk in the floor and having dialogue, and they pastor 5,000 people with pastors who only have 50 people. It is an amazing thing that takes place when we gather together. It's in January every year, we're praying that the pandemic will have released, and that we can at least do it in some form of social distancing if necessary, or even having a virtual component. But we'll be meeting January 6th through the 9th of 2021. And this year we will meet at the Georgia Center, the University of Georgia Center for Continuing Education. And what I'm most excited about this year, and it kind of goes right along what we've been talking about, is that there are classes, of course, that are offered for pastors, for pastoring, for preaching. We have classes for church leaders, for leadership. So I would really encourage any pastor who has a senior leadership team to bring your entire team this year. We've got some church packages that we're offering this year that I think will be a huge blessing to you to help your church partner with the conference. But then also not just pastoring, not just leadership, but technology is a big piece. Michelle, you just hinted to our age. Thank God for the Keishas and Nicoles of the world, because
Amen.
I wouldn't survive. I would not survive. And this pandemic has really shifted a whole lot of things. I've been blessed to have a Nicole, to have a Rondalyn, to have a Edwina in my church, to help us do a lot of creative things. But a lot of churches don't have those resources. And so here's a major plug. I don't know who's watching, but here's a major plug. I can't say it nowhere else the way I want to say it, but I can say it here. But there's a Black sister named Nona Jones, who is the director of faith-based partnerships for Facebook. I mean, the director of faith-based partnerships for Facebook. She's going to be in Athens in January. I mean, you don't get no more major than that.
Wow.
Every church is on Facebook right now. And so you're on Facebook because Nona Jones has been vying for us and pushing for us to be able to use that platform for free. And so, but then we're also doing a huge piece on social justice. And so the things that I'm passionate about, I'm grateful that God has given us a platform to be able to do all of that in the Classic City Conference. So we've got a whole track of classes dealing with social justice and how the church could be engaged. And so we've got John Faison, who's getting ready to do a sermon series all summer at his church in Nashville, Tennessee, called Ain't My Jesus. He's talking to these white folks who got a different picture of what Jesus is. And he's got a whole sermon series he's going to do called Ain't My Jesus. And just did a whole piece on social justice for the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship this past week. And there's some others that I can't name yet because Nicole hadn't released them yet. But we got some serious justice fighters that are coming to Athens to help us to be able to see how to shape this. And so I say this in closing as it relates to the conference. It's a conference that's going to help you do church better and also show you how to engage in the community better. And it's what we need, because it's not just the issue we're dealing with now, but we're going to be dealing with the effects of everything we've experienced these last few months. We're calling the conference the new normal because church is going to be totally different on the other side of this, and race relations prayerfully is going to be totally different on the other side of this as well. Things have come to a head, and I believe God's going to give us the opportunity to deal with it all.
Reverend Ricardo, you got to drop all your handles, because Nicole will have a fit if you don't tell them about the app, if you don't tell them your Twitter name, if you don't tell them this is your platform.
How can people find you out?
I'm getting texts. I'm getting some text messages now, so
exactly.
I don't know what all,
because I know it's coming.
All right. So listen, if you want to follow me, I tried to make it very clear. I'm J. Ricardo Smith on every platform, anywhere that there's. I mean, now half of them I don't use, but I do engage. I will engage on Facebook and on Instagram for sure. You can follow our church, BC Oconee. That's every platform. It'll pull up Brown's Chapel, BC Oconee. And then, of course, the Classic City Conference. Classic City Conference, just the conference name. We are definitely engaged on Facebook and Instagram. And so, we would love for you to follow us to see what's coming. And from that Classic City platform, Classic City Conference platform, we're going to have some conversations. We do something in our conference called Classic Conversations. And we'll be doing some of those conversations virtually leading up to the conference. And so there's a strong possibility that even one of the lawyers who was on the Ahmaud Arbery case is going to be one of the people we interview. And so I'm just excited about being able to use that platform. Also, yes, download the app, the Classic City Conference app. Just go to your app store. If you are on Apple, go to the App Store. I don't even know what they do, Keisha. What they do on Droids?
Oh, I don't really speak Droid, but a little birdie told me that I guess y'all have like a Google store or something.
Well, I'm thinking you were on. I thought you were on a Droid, but you iPhone.
Pastor, we'll talk after, cause you try.
We'll talk. Okay. All right. I'm just trying to get you saved. If you need to get saved, the doors to the iPhone church are still open. You know.
Oh, honey,
we'll be one.
Years.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm excited. I think that's some great teaching opportunities for all of our faith-based community. And even folks, like you said, it's not just for clergy. And I think that's the one thing that people forget, that it's not just for clergy. And the other thing is that the work of the church is so closely related to the church work of the community that people try to separate them and make them become two separate things, but they're not. Because when you leave those four walls of your church or that block of your church, you go back out into the world. Absolutely. And hopefully that the person who you are in the church and the work you're doing can translate outside, because if it's not going beyond the walls of the church, then who are you really working with? So I'll throw in my plug. The one thing that I really want the Black church to focus on more from a growth standpoint on several areas is regarding that financial piece. I hear also often that the Black church, that we don't want to talk about money in the church. And for me, that makes me like crush inside when I hear that. It literally, because professionally as a financial advisor, that makes me crumble inside. And I say that because it's such a multi-layered thing. We want to usually just do the basic level of, let's talk about budgeting, right? And we assume that everybody, and I always say, we are now taking that same thought pattern as the rest of the world about Black folks, that we all struggling with our money and we don't make enough. We all are not in that same boat. And so while yes, budgeting is important, we also have to think about even legacy planning. There's so many times that I have worked with clients that they have made the beneficiary of an insurance policy or retirement plan, the church. We don't see that as often in the Black church. We don't talk about the retirement plan. Our members who are planning to retire say, oh, I got it figured out. And I see so many self-inflicted financial wounds, and I'm getting the phone calls after the fact that you paid more money to Uncle Sam than you ended up walking away with, because we didn't do it the right way. And so we have to have those conversations in the church, because again, that's where we go to get that information. We've always gone to the church to get the basic information. Like you said, when we get in trouble, we go to the church. But we got to know we're in trouble sometimes. And guess what? If we can weed it off before we get there, that also puts us in a better position, because then we see the church grow and thrive too. So those are some things as a call. And I will say, if it is not me, I will connect you with somebody in your area who can help you.
No, that's where my plug was going to come in. You need to bring Michelle Pearson to your church. Michelle has been to our church numerous times, has been an amazing blessing when it comes to finances. I mean, I can even think of a family in particular that started following your budget plans that you had given. And just to show you the beauty of the Black church, if I may, that they followed what Michelle has given to get themselves ready to purchase a home. The Lord grew our church to where we had a realtor who's now a member of our church. And he then, after they had gotten themselves where they were financially ready, he was able to get them in the home of their choice. Wow. And so that's the beauty of the Black church, knowing who's there, but that's also the beauty of bringing in people who have some expertise like Michelle. And so listen, I don't care who else you recommend, you better get Michelle Pearson to your church to talk about these finances. She'll be a huge blessing.
Yeah. And I will do that. I will also say one of our things that we're going to release the week of Juneteenth, we're going to do a D-free or debt-free challenge under the Business Alliance. And we're going to invite everybody to join under Pastor DeForest out of, I think he's in New York. He wrote a book called D-Free Living. So, and he has a whole page. So we're going to set up, we have a Business Alliance page. Yeah, Pastor Sorry. So we have a Business Alliance page set up that we're going to release in honor of June 19th. We're going to try to pay off $19 million of debt across our community. And so we're going to invite everybody to join in, everybody. Amazing. And then we're also going to ask on the other end, if you don't have debt, guess what? The challenge is for us to save $19 million in some shape, form, or capacity, whether it's retirement, personal savings, whatever that looks like. And we're going to have a list of a couple Black Black banks and financial institutions as well to support. So we have some things in the work. And this is what I mean when I say for us as the Business Alliance, it's about us all growing and evolving together. And you don't have to personally do the work and track all this on your own. We're going to partner together across all of our affairs, the business, community, and government, to make sure that we're all lifting each other up at the same time and supporting each other and playing on your strengths. Because you're right, we don't all do everything well. I know that I don't. I live in the wheelhouse of finances. Great. I'm going to stay there and do my best to support you however I can. Right. Thank you. And so that's the space I want to live in. And so we say, thank you so much. Pastor James Ricardo Smith of Browns Chapel in Bishop,
Yes.
Georgia.
Thank you.
And I'll also even say thank you again for the brainchild of the Classic City Conference,
Yes.
because that is so needed. It really is. So thank you for that. But thank you for taking time to join us for the 19 days of Juneteenth. I will give you, are there any final words that you want to leave with us as we come to a close?
I'm just honored, and I applaud you guys for the amazing work you're doing. And I'm looking forward to continuing to watch these journeys with these brilliant Black people that y'all are bringing on, leading up to June 19th. I will close here. I was listening to Pastor John Faison. Again, he was coming to the conference, but Pastor Faison said that we have to be willing to speak challenging words, knowing that challenging words have consequences, and that we have to not sacrifice our comfort, to not sacrifice courage for our comfort. We don't want to just be comfortable, but we got to have courage to speak truth to power. And so I want to encourage anybody who is affiliated with a local church, that you would light a fire under your leaders. I know there's some who may say they're not called to this work, but if you're called to do the work of Jesus, this is the work. And so we've got to step up. And for those who are not connected to a local church, I would encourage them, because I know we talked about the unchurched earlier, I would encourage them to keep doing the work. And as you see the church present in the work, give it another try. You know, there are churches that take seriously fighting for the cause of our people. And it's just a matter of finding the right place. And there are places that exist that do it. And so I just want to thank you guys again for the opportunity. And I pray that I was of some help to shed light on the work of social justice in the local church. Every church ought to be full of social justice workers. And, you know, Pastor Curry would ask this question, you know, should we have a social justice ministry in our church? The whole church ought to be doing some type of social justice, whether you have an actual ministry or not. But just like Michelle will come to you about finances, I'll be glad to come to any church to help you build a social justice ministry in your church, because it's time for us to get to work. Time for us to get to work.
And Pastor, I'll say this, since you are so polite and will not say this to the unchurched folks. I always think about this when people who have church hurt, because church hurt is very real. And I always say every church is not created equally, but we get church hurt and we leave the church completely as a whole body, right? But I always say, you still in relationships, you got hurt by one person. Wow. And you did not stop dating, you tried it again. And sometimes you with the same person that hurt you. Right. So it's okay sometimes to go back and try that church. So since you're too polite to say it, I'll say it. And not that I'm saying, oh yeah, everybody needs to be at this particular church. You got to find what works for you. Again, absolutely. You have to figure out and test that out and see where you're comfortable, where you're going to grow and thrive. And if you're just there and you're not growing and thriving, it's probably not the place for you. But what can I say? So that's it. Again, that's it. But I will say thank you so much again for joining the Business Alliance as we celebrate 19 days of Juneteenth. All this would not be possible without some of our sponsors. So I'd like to give a shout out to several of our sponsors. Of course, our primary group, the Northeast Georgia Business Alliance, is our host for this evening. Rashi's Cuisine, who's always been very supportive in so many ways, and the Culinary Kitchen. Again, I'll encourage anybody, please, 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 if you are a small business, if you are a church, if you are a nonprofit, if you're a social organization, go add yourself to the mobathens.com. mobathens.com is where our directory is, so we can find each other. How do we support each other? Because as people, especially in our Athens, Oconee area, is very transient. People are asking, where do I go to get my hair done? But they also ask, where do I go to church? So where can I go to find a church? So make sure you're adding yourselves on mobathens.com. We would not be here filming and showing you guys on this live broadcast without the Narrative Marketing Group. So thank you, Nicole, and thank you, The Narrative. I am here as Michelle Pearson, the office of Michelle Pearson with Edward Jones. And so again, for your financial needs, give me a call. If it's not me, I promise I will lead you in the right direction. Our Farm to Neighborhood program, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. And be sure you go check out Northeast Georgia Business Alliance.org, NEGA businessalliance.org, to see our full schedule for the 19 days of Juneteenth. Tomorrow is Soulful Sunday. We will host a Netflix watch party. For that one, we will be looking at 13th on June 7th. So at 6:19, we will have a Netflix watch party. You can log in and you can be in the chat and dialogue. If you have not seen 13th, you need to. It's going to be very eye-opening and revealing. So if you're trying to wake up, this will definitely pour some water on your face, okay? So make sure you join us at 6:19. The instructions are here on your screen, but they will also be on our website, negabusinessalliance.org. So make sure you join us for that. We will always, on Monday, we try to start the week on a positive note. So you'll have our Monday TikTok challenge that will also come up. So make sure you join in for Move It Monday. It will be posted and released at 6:19 on our Facebook page. We will also then talk about 1619 project, so you can get to have some podcasts there for learning opportunities on Monday. Teach It Tuesday, we'll dive into more of the history of Juneteenth. So that information will also be released at 6:19. Do y'all see the theme? 6:19, Juneteenth, 6:19. You will know this before we finish, I hope. And we will round out on Wealth Building Wednesday. We look forward to having Dr. Shanice Allen, as she is talking about her business, the Healthcare Institute. And we also are going to talk a little bit more, some of that conversation is going to talk about healthcare, especially around COVID and how we are being affected. But even I'm going to ask her some questions about Black women in healthcare specifically as well. So we hope to have you there. Thrive Thursday, we will have Robert Tucker, where we're talking about counseling in the Black community, or the lack thereof sometimes, but even generational depression, generational issues that we carry from generation to generation, and those practices that we don't even realize that we do throughout our families, and how to break some of those generational curses, hopefully. We will then come back with Figured Out Friday, and this is where we'll have Dr. Joan Collier on and having the conversation of Dear White People. So that will be fun and amazing. If y'all know Joan, she's a ball of energy. And then the next Saturday, we will have our self-care Saturday with Say It Saturday with Celeste Negeve. Again, of how do we then to make sure we're taking care of ourselves, because we cannot be the catalyst for social justice and change if we aren't healthy as individuals. So that will round out our next week. We look forward to having you back for our 19 days of Juneteenth. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. You all have a rest and a safe evening. If you are protesting, please be safe in more ways than one. Wear your mask, but also make sure you're paying attention to your surroundings and taking necessary precautions. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining in. Y'all have a good evening.
Bye. Be safe.
Bye.